Hi everyone, welcome back to the Painting Simply channel. We're going to continue some of our summer of painting flowers. I'm going to do an open flower this time with some softer blossoms. And I want to show you that petal edging technique because I had some nice questions for people about the petal edging technique. The main brush we're going to use today is the Filbert, and this is a number 8 Filbert. I like painting with the 8 or the 10. The 10 is what I used on the last rose. This is the 8. It's a little bit smaller. It allows me to do more detailing work, especially if I'm going to do an open rose or, if you're going to do a peony or something like that. The open or the smaller brush can allow you to do some more detailed strokes, okay? All right. So I have a board here. It's about 9... Excuse me, it's, I think it was 13 by 9, what it is here. Or it's just a little bit larger than like a sheet of paper tall, but it's about the same width. It's pretty close. So anything like in here will work fine. I've given it a coat of canvas prep medium, sanded it with 180 grit sandpaper, and off we go, okay? So let's do some fun things. This is my palette. This is the normal palette. I'll put the list of all of the colors down below, okay? And in the video description, the Heritage Multimedia. I'm going to start out and I'm going to, let's just get some of our, well, now my little extender is empty here, so let's just put some more in there right now real quick. I have all my colors out. I also have a little bit of the Dairvan Open Medium here. Okay, so, and then some extender. I'm going to start out with some extender. We'll make just a light color here. I want to do maybe a light blue, a little bit lighter than that. And let's maybe take it off, just a slightly greenish, just a little bit. Let's see what this looks like. That's kind of a pretty bright, fun color. We'll put some other colors in here as well. But let's start out a little bit lighter. I'm going to wash this through also. So I really like the modeling of the backgrounds that I have been doing the last couple of years. And I just so enjoy them. Let's put a little more color, a little more deeper color into the center there. Right out into this area here where I think maybe I'll put that rose up this way. So we'll pull some interest this way, maybe a touch more blue into that as well. A little blue burnt sienna into that here. Some of those colors down. You know me, I love color movement here. I just really like that. So we'll push some of that in. Maybe a little bit more. Sometimes I go to a smaller brush, but I want to keep the background as large as possible this time with this. So when I do a lot of it, so it won't compete against the details that I'm going to be adding to the flower. So I'm going to keep this quite large in here, this coloring and stuff. And let's just get brave here. Around like that. That's kind of nice. And pull some of this down here like that. Down. I love that color right there, that power right there. That's pretty nice there like that. Now you can wipe your brush and soften anything out if you want to, but that'll work pretty nice. Now it's a little bit explosive here, so I'm going to walk through, soften some of this out here, and get some of this move. I love this kind of stuff when it happens. So hopefully that frame won't take up too much of that. So that's pretty nice. Now, if you really, really like it and, you want to get some more of it here. I was just looking for my painting knife here. You can back paint it like, take some of your lights like this and push some of that into here to get some of that softer look, maybe a little blue in there to carry that color through here like that. See, I love that kind of stuff. And I'm going to do a soft white kind of flower here. So this type of movement in it is really quite pretty. See, just take your knife, put some of that color, drag it through there. It'll help, it breaks up, and it just adds a lot of interest. There are some paintings I did a lot of movement back like this through it. And in the 30 Days of Roses, which is on the other channel, I do a lot of this with some of those paintings I did several years ago. And I just love the way some of that looks. So, you know, it just adds interest. And you can add that at any time. You can come back and add more of that. Matter of fact, let's just take that light blue that we're going to pop in here, maybe a little heavier with the blue, and just pull some of that right in there like that. And you can take your big brush, if you think, oh, that's going to be a little too much, you can just pull through like that and soften some of that movement out. Doesn't that look neat? Yeah, so, you know, there's just a lot of things you can do, but your knife, like we use in our landscapes and everything, adds so much to it. And if you want to get a lot of fracturing, the color you're putting on is heavy or thicker than the soft. So I thinned it out a little bit with the extender. So then when I come with that thicker paint, I get these little fracturing marks here. So if you want to get fracturing marks, the paint you're putting on with the knife is thicker than the paint you have on your surface, and you'll get them, okay? All right, so let's get back over and start our painting here. I had that 10. There's my 8. Let's go in and start the 8. Start this little guy. Let's start with some violet and some blue and some burnt sienna right in here. We'll add a bit of the light color into here. Maybe a bit more of the violet side here. And let's just come right in here. Right up in here. This is where I'm going to paint kind of an open rose facing the other way this time than what I did last time. And so it's going to be more of an oval. So when I open up a flower here, I tend to do more of an oval. So I'll do something about like that. And I like to keep it, if I'm going to do the, just drop that paper towel right into my paint there. If I'm going to do a petal edging technique, I generally soften some of this out. So I'm going to blur some of this. This is what I call blurring. Very light pressure, and I blur that color out there. Now we'll take a little darker, maybe a little red violet with some of this dark. Let's come right into where we're going to have the center of the flower here, and we'll put the center in. Little small marks. Just kind of stab it a little bit, but kind of circular motion. Lift the pressure as you come out of that center. We want that dark right into the center. I also want some of this dark and this color down here on what would be the bowl. So I'm going to shorten the reaching petals. These are what I call the reaching petals. These are the bowl petals here. And I'm going to shorten all of this area here. You know, normally when I do a rose, I raise it up to here, and that center's up here. That gives me more room for a larger bowl. When I do an open rose, I drop everything down a little lower here, right down in here. We'll push some of that. Maybe a mark or two of some of that violet right down in there. Let's put some warm color in there, which will be our yellow oxide. Let's get some warm color in here. Right back through here, a little bit back in here, right? And you can blur that if you want to keep that softness to it. I want a little bit of marks, but I don't, so I want some of it, but I want to blur that a little bit. And sometimes I'll do this. I'll come back several times. Like I'll blur that softly and then do it again. And that gets you even more interest here to that rose. Isn't that fun? Look at that, beautiful. Let's get a little deeper, a little bit of blue, a little bit of that burnt sienna. Those are pretty color combinations for this. Carry some of that. Let's just leave that kind of like that. Now, let's come in and establish some forward. So I want to do kind of a yellow, a white, yellowish, big open flower here. And then we'll do some maybe yellowish blossoms, yellow-white blossoms out here. So I'll take some of my white right with some of this yellow oxide. I'll keep the yellows kind of soft right now. So when I want that, I use yellow oxide, the darker of them. A little bit of white here. And we'll come right up in through here, and we'll start building the front of the flower here. So around like that, more of an oval shape here. So this will be short, the bowl will be short, which will cause it to turn. And let's take a bit of that softness right out to this side, So it forms an oval here. See, there's the oval. There's the bottom of the bowl there. And I'm going to do a petal edging technique, which means I'm going to work the brush a little bit, keeping some of the marks softer so I can come back in and physically draw petals. I'll show you here. Let's go a little bit of this gray, some of this yellow, so it's softer back here. Softer colors, a little, just a touch of yellowness to it here. Let's just blur that blue out. And soften this out. So here, so we'll get some here, some colors. And you can, when you're painting these out through here, you can pull out or push in. I can do both because I'm painting for a blurry little flower. I don't want a defined flower like a lot of times you see me do. I want it more blurry. Let's add some yellow, maybe a little bit of our other yellows. Gets it a touch brighter up over here onto the light side here. And so I'll have a bit more color here, there like that, right into there, and some light, and just see this small, quick little stabbing marks here. I'm keeping it oh so soft because I'm going to draw the petals with my filbert here in just a minute. Okay, maybe some of this yellow, maybe a yellow to the dark into the inside of the flower here. And so I'll set this in. Now I'm going to walk it right into that center. And then I'm just going to go back out and reset that center. Sometimes when I'm painting a flower like this, I'll reset this center 4 or 5 times until I get my color set up on the flower the way I like it. My cool side right down here, my warm side right up there, and my lights. I want a bit more of a brighter yellow here, maybe right up into this area because we want some yellowness to this flower. So you see I'm setting up a warm side, cool side, and I'm keeping it very soft here. I'll draw the petals. We're going to draw the petals. Maybe some soft greenish background color in here, which will help us say a softer light. A little bit of our violet here for that bowl. So I'm just setting up. This is what, so it's like a rose and it's very soft. It has the center, boom, the shorter bowl and shorter petals here. And it has this softness to it, not a lot of the strokes to it like some of my flowers have. Let's put maybe a touch of the red, which is pretty, right? Yellow into the red, right in here. Let some of that pinky color come in. That's a pretty color in there as well. And back up over to the yellow. So I'm just watching my colors evolve through the flower. That's what I'm looking at. And when I finally get it right, then we'll paint it up a little bit more. So let's get a little more dark. Open the flower up. So small little tapping marks over here. Open the flower up a bit here. Some smaller pushes. Sometimes I just blur this out here. It's got some nice movement in there. And a little bit over here down at the base. That looks pretty good. Maybe a bit of the deep color here. Sometimes a little bit of green. I do like in white flowers and stuff like that especially, I like a little bit of green sometimes in there. And there we go. That's kind of pretty. That's a nice contrasting one there. Let's take some burnt sienna, and some green, some of this color here. And we'll give the idea of the stems. Maybe it's a dark area there, so maybe a touch of blue and burnt sienna, which will keep it a little darker. We're going to put in some blossom marks here. So a few stems coming out the other way here and around. It's kind of pretty. We'll come up through here with some blossom stems here. We'll put some up there. So all of this area here will be blossoms. Let's just take a real soft little yellow here. And we'll just give the idea of a few blossoms. Here we'll show that. That'll be kind of neat. And they're going to turn and go all different kinds of ways. Here, some back ones here, some not quite opened up ones here. Maybe one back down over here. That's pretty. We'll leave that. Maybe something crossing right here so it fills up a bit. Don't know yet. We'll just kind of toss some color in there. Sometimes when I'm not real sure, I do this too, is I'll take like the yellows and just kind of create the areas of them, blur them out a bit, and then I'll, sometimes I'll blur them all out with my brush here as well, so I don't set up too much perfect marks. Blur it out, because when I go to draw this, that I will give the definition. So you see, everything just starts out kind of blurry, and I like that. So a little bit of that stem, let's preserve that a bit here. I like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, maybe some leaves, some green burnt siennas, some soft leaves in here for right now. We don't just toss in some colors here. Casual, you can blur them a bit because they're not perfect yet, right? Okay, now we'll come in and we'll set. I'll just pinch wipe that color out of my brush, that green and stuff here. We're going to come in and paint and set the shape of the flower. I'm going to come back up with some white, maybe a bit of my soft yellows here. Let's just build it right in here. A little texture right on the edge of the brush here. Let's come in and draw like a front petal right here. And I'll pull down. Now I picked up a little bit of that dark. So if I wanted to continue making the petal light, I need to white my brush here and pick up some more white, because if I don't, I'll drag that dark up here and the flower will flatten out. So anytime that I drag down and if I pick up too much dark, this is not too bad. This will be a little softer, and I'll let that just happen right out here towards the side of the flower. But you can see, if I want to build it and build that contrast, I need to white that brush so I don't drag dark up there, which will then gray out that thing, and then you'll be adding more and more white, and then your flowers become too flat. Okay, so let's go a little more dark here. Let's go a little heavier with the white, and let's just build this a couple of times here. Boom, right in there like that. Build that up in a couple of smaller marks. Now, this is what I call the petal edging. So I'm going to come here like this and onto this side and maybe just lean over. I don't want to get a whole bunch of light on this side. So I'm going to lean over on the brush, and I can have, you can see I pick up some of that, and I'm just going to lean into the edge, walk into the edge here, and use just the edge of the filbert to draw the rounding shape of the petal here. So I don't have a tremendous amount of color there into it. Okay, now I want to build this front up a bit this way too. So I want a little more light. So I'll build a bit more light onto that. So I don't want a V shape right there in the center of my flower. I don't care for that too much. So I'll build this back and forth a couple of different ways here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to put a softer yellow, so I can come back at any time and use just the edge of the brush and say pull down some softer yellow here, right in there like that, and then pick up the edge. This is the petal edging technique. Pick up the edge like that. So my petal already has the movement in it. So I've already got movement going this way. So now what I'll do is I'll just roll over onto this edge, and I draw like what you see as petals. Does that make sense? There, like that. So I can draw petals here. So, and I can in reverse come up and say, oh, I want to see a little more shadow. So usually in a big flower or a flower that's going to have a lot of interest, I'll do this several times as I build. I build the flower for movement back and forth, lightness, and really build the flower. So here's a little more light. I'll just come in and push that in. Boom, see, that's kind of pretty. Maybe take just a bit of the light on the edge, and now I'll just give a quick little mark that'll make it look like the edge of the petal. There, see? Just a quick little mark. You don't need to pull the whole petal because you'll make the petal light. So I'll come right up to here. I'll use that little edge here, and I'll just draw a little edge. And it makes the light edge, the tip of the petal here. We can turn this over this way here and add a few little curved petals, lighting down here, drawing down little marks here. As the paint runs out, I can go down into the center there and give some movement there into the center. Does that make sense? So don't take a fully loaded brush down here into the center. Start up here and let it run out. Or soften out your yellow here so you're not very light and not very much paint, and you can come back over here to the shadow side and start to add some little petals here, some little turned petals. If you get something that's a little light, just take maybe some of this red even right here and take some of it out. Add some of that pretty color over there. Always watching the edge of your brush. And the small filbert like this, the number 8 filbert, is beautiful for this size of flower. So let's add a little softness here. Okay, a little bit of that oval. And I can restate some of this violet right in here. This beautiful violet, maybe a bit of that burnt sienna. I love that color into the flowers. Right down into here. And pull some of that shadow into that flower there like that. And I don't want it to get too much of a V shape, so I'll push. Let's go with a full load of the light and build the lighter petal here across maybe the front here. And see that? And so maybe I want to draw an edge there. So I like that. So now I have the movement of the petal, the paint movement here coming this way. But I don't have a defined edge. And a lot of times we would reload our brush and stroke it again, and then we'd make the whole front of the flower light. But this time you're going to use the beauty of the filbert. You're going to come in here and just slide in and pick up a little bit on that corner. And you're just going to lean over onto that corner and draw the edge or the corner of that petal and pull that in and leave the light little edge. So here I'll pick up a little bit here, just a little because I'm on the shadow side. And I'll pull in a little bit of it, could go a little lighter. And it's going to take some practice to figure out how much paint and the value of the colors and stuff that you use, but I can just give some soft little petals there. Now, that's too much of a V shape, so I'm just going to round these down just a bit here. So let's round this one down just a bit here. So we'll take maybe a little extender. I like shadows to be slightly thinner, so maybe a bit of the extender here, and just round this just a bit more. Push into that one and round that up. So it's real pretty. So I do like that. Let's take a yellow, just a touch of the light in that, and we'll lighten up some outside petals here, right up there like that. Maybe see, I'm controlling the light that I'm using. I'm picking up here, right like that. It's opening up the flower here. Let's pull one more across. So this, as I pull down, I'm adding the light petal to the bowl. As I'm pulling like this in the back, I'm adding the light petal to the inside of the flower there. And you can always take a little bit of dark and just move this out through the dark, through little half circles there, and increase some of the shadows there onto the inside. So this is what look to the roses that I call the petal edging technique, where it gives them lighter, lacy edges. Let's come over here. Well, let's go over, let's take some yellows, some heavier yellows, put that into the brush. Maybe a little open medium. I love open medium because it gives me a bit of transparency. Let's first pick up a bit of white with this, and we will put on the light movement of the petal. So I'm looking for a few streaks coming into the flower here, just like that, in towards that bulb, right in here. I'm just going to let the yellows soften out as I go up and around and back here, and they fade kind of away there. Maybe dirty this down, a little bit of violet so it's not quite as yellow. As I come across the front of the flower, I'm looking just for movement, stroking out movement, because I'll put the petal edge in just a minute. Does that make sense? Now, I lost some of the bowl, so I'll take a little bit of dark, and I'll re-emphasize that bowl right in there. Pull that. You don't ever want to lose your bowl shadow, because that's what makes your flower pretty, okay? Now, I've got that dark. I'm going to pinch wipe it. I don't need to rinse it out or anything. I'm going to put a bit more yellow back into that, a little bit of open medium. And now I'm going to pick up some more white right over here, but this time, I notice how I set it off here to the side. I have yellow, and then I'm going to walk in and pick up right on the side of the brush here, back and forth a bit, some of that light edge. And I'm going to lean over onto this light edge, right like this, and I'm going to pull down and right the direction I want to go, leaning over to that edge, and that's what gives me the light little petal edge there. I'm going to wipe my brush, put in a little more yellow, pick up just a bit of that light right here, and we'll come right over here and drop in a light little edge right there. I like that. That is almost perfect right there. I can use that light edge. So see, I have enough shadow and everything right here. Sometimes you'll see me just blur this with my finger, but I have enough shadow in there that I could come in and give the look of a light little petal right in here like this, just right across here, coming in, just like that. And that's a pretty little petal there. Maybe I'll go to a full load of the white right here and build the front of my rose a bit more right within those marks right there. And sometimes I'll maybe take a little bit of the light and pull out. If I feel the petal doesn't have enough movement, I'll pull out. That's a little too streaky. And then reset that mark, a little bit of light right here. And just come in and reset that light little edge right in there. That's kind of nice. I could have a little bit more light right in here, right on that side of that flower. And that looks kind of neat there, like that. See? So it's a real lacy look to the flower, leaving those little light marks, right? I like those there. So now when we come over to the other side, let's darken it down a bit. So we'll pick up some of these dirty colors, leave a little bit of light. Let's put a light edge petal right in here, maybe out like that, and just pull in a bit because we're going to leave this one kind of soft. Maybe one here so that it doesn't look like it's two wings going out the side of the rose. So we'll put one right into the center there. And then a little edge over here. So this technique is what I call the petal edging technique. And if you go over to our main channel, JansenArt, and if you go to the main page, the front main page of our channel, and down there, right above where it starts to say the videos, not at the top of the page, but right up in there, you'll see a little search button, and you type right in there, petal edging. You'll come up with a lot of videos where I teach you how to do this petal edging technique. Because I used it for years, and I still do, for a lot of real lacy looks to flowers. Now back here, we could let this just kind of blur and soften off here. We don't need a whole lot. Maybe Maybe a little lacy edge right in here as that's just fading away in there. But I don't need a whole lot. You could, I mean, let me just show you so you can see. A soft little light right out here, just a little edge. See that just, but not every petal needs it. Does that make sense? So you could define it up in there a little bit more if you want. I think I'm going to go back to my yellow, maybe a little brighter yellow here. And I think I want just a touch more brighter yellow and white, right up in the very front of that flower there. Maybe a touch more coming out right here onto this petal. I like the center interest of the flower, the front petals of it to be really light. That's what I like. I'm going to restate this one, a little more light. Push that up and down a bit here. And then I'll just redraw that light edge here. Boom. Just a little mark or two of it. I don't need it everywhere. Just a little soft mark of it there. Doesn't that make kind of a pretty little flower there? See? It's very, and this is very open. You just don't want to make it, you do want to keep this nice. I call this a transition petal, that front. You want the marks here to go both ways, this way, and right down through the center. If you don't do that, and this is very important, because this is a mistake that a lot of young rose painters make. If you don't do that, you get roses that are coming out at too much of an angle. You need this transitional petal right here that creates the roundness to the front of the flower. Does that make sense? So we'll create this nice roundness right here. We'll blur that right into that nice bowl right there. And yeah, and you can get it many different ways, but let's just build this just a bit more this way. And it takes on the characteristics of what we call a stroke rose. You know, it's not like a realistic rose, but you could use this technique to get more realism. I'm going to go a little more yellow here. Here like that. That's kind of pretty. And let's just bring that bowl right in there. And so you'll see me several times, I'll work it, and then I just, after I get the movement of the rose the way I like, then I'll come back and add the petal edges, if that makes sense. But I got to get the movement to the rose that I like. There, I like that one right there. I could have a little more light right out, like say on this one, right coming right up underneath there. That's kind of neat. Maybe a soft. So it's really forgiving, this technique, for a lot of things. Let's put just a little edge on that, right in there. Just a little edge on that one. It's nice. That bring that shadow back out. There we go. That's pretty. Now let's go back up over. Let's model up. Little open medium. Let's model up some of these yellow blossoms here that we want. Let's put some of our red violet and quinacridone, maybe a touch of burnt sienna, right into the centers on them. Model that out and around, push that around. Look for the movement in the flower. Paint the movement into the flower. So we'll get some dark right into the center here, that pretty dark. You can add a little blue if you want it to go a little closer to the other one over there. We can get a little yellow and burnt sienna, which is pretty, to the shadow side over here. So yellow to the top side and that to the shadow side there. Now, so we've got a little bit of the movement going in and out, but let's increase the movement. Now let's go down here, yellow oxide and a little bit of white. Before we put the petal edges on, let's come right into here and increase the movement pulling in. Now, like on one of the last videos that I showed, if you haven't watched it on the other channel, I do one called Painting the Roses Sharon. And I say it's very, very important on the Rose and Sharon, if you want those to be soft and not stiff, that you don't stroke you don't pull all the way down. If you pull all the way down, you make the petal too stiff. So you go about halfway in here. As you set up these petals here, you go about halfway in. And so that you don't, if you pull all the way, the petals will be just super stiff. So you go about halfway, and sometimes I'll just blur the colors going back out. Now, let me take a little yellow, both are yellows, some white here, right on the edge. And now we'll paint more of the lightness to the edge here. So I'll paint the edge. And you see me push this brush very flat, and I'm leaning over on the side that doesn't have that white because I'm softening it out. I want more white in that flower petal, so I'm going to come right up over here and add some more around. Now that's too much, I think. Back and forth, right? And I'm just going to add a little more shadow back out here. I love to paint the back and forth like this, guys, because this is what gives the movement to the beauty to the flower, the interest. Now, I'm going to lean right over onto the edge. Let's put this light edge right there. Right? Boom, right there. It puts that nice light edge that gives the petal edging to it. Let's turn this over, tap it to soften it a little. Turn this over, lean over and put the light edge. Maybe draw the light edge out here a bit. You can do that as well. A couple of little marks. As that paint runs out, the color's running out, I'm going to lean right over here because I don't have very much paint, and that's just enough to give me a little edge on that one there. That might be a bit stiff, so I'll pull some of it out. There. Let's build a little more light, maybe some brighter yellow and light right in here. Bit more. And right in here where it's coming up against that soft flower. Right there. That's kind of a pretty little flower. I may not. You can do a little. Let's just do a little. Show you. Lean over. Just that. See how tiny? You can probably barely see that. Ever so tiny. But that's all I need over here to suggest the edge. See? Because it's much darker over there. And that'll suggest the edge over there on that petal really nice. Right? Now, let's go over. Let's grab a bit of our reds and violets here. Let's add a little bit to these flowers. They're still slightly wet, not tremendously, but slightly wet. So we got the main flower there. The rest of these flowers, we're just going to go very casual here. We don't need a ton of structure to them because you already are going to see them as flowers. Let's take a burnt sienna and green, a little more burnt sienna. We'll give these like a little calyx and a stem line here. A couple of marks for that. Blur those out just a bit. There, those will be kind of nice little, and maybe some green and yellow. Some kind of ideas of leaves here. I love this. I call this the Filbert brush dance. I just drag those marks around like that. I love it. And I let what happens to it. And at first when I did it, boy, those were really hard, and they were very, very structured. And now they're getting, more loose. I'm going to add a little light blue to this as well. Soften these out. Little extender. So it's not quite so much here. Some of these colors right out here. That's kind of pretty, right? And so the question is, do you do more here? Do you add more yellow? So I'm always coming back and looking at this, while this is going on here. I'm going to take a little extender, and I'm going to take some of my yellow, both my yellows, maybe more of the yellow oxide. That's a little bright. And I'm going to increase the yellow right in through here like that. And this is where the fusion brush really shines, because I can do that really easy. Let's go a little bit brighter. right there in the front, maybe right in here. And those two yellows go together better. Maybe a bit more light. And it gets easier. See how easy it is for me to lighten this flower up right now? And part of the reason of that is because the other colors are starting to tack up. This is one reason why I love painting with acrylics. And it's painting with the Heritage. I can control the drying time. And I usually know that by the time I paint one or two other flowers, this one starts to tack up a little bit. And it's really easy for me to come back in and add some movement and some light to make, you know, if it's too wet, you fight it, and then you lose all your shadows, you lose all your movement. But if the underside tacks a little bit, gets a little bit sticky, your next colors you lay on just touch into there, no problem. And that's what I like. So I'm going to increase that light right in here onto this one. Boom, just like that. That's kind of pretty. Let's take some yellows, a little bit of whites. Let's model this all up. And we'll do just some simple, just idea, little turn flowers or something like that up here. Nothing big, just idea here. Blur it off and around, and you'll see them as little petals and flowers here. We don't have to have very much here because we have the big structured flower here up into the front. So the rest of this can just be ideas here. And let's build just a bit more white right up into the front, right like that. Keep them soft. And I like that. A little bit more light right in here, right like that. That just looks like a little blossom. Let's take some of that light right in here. Right in there. Just lighten that one up a bit. A little bit of movement there. That's pretty. Some yellows. We get down into the shadows here. Some yellows. Some of these little blossoms and stuff here. And that's all I'm looking at is painting little blossoms, ideas of little blossoms. Push it around a bit here. And blurry, what I'm looking for is some movement, right? Movement. Just push it around a bit here. I don't want to make them too distinct because they'll compete with my other flowers. So just push them around a bit here. You just see them a bit. Let's put in some centers here a bit. What that one would be right in there. Right like that. Let's push some yellow into this one. A little bit of yellow and white. And I love the open medium in this because my strokes get a touch transparent. And I'm just painting a soft little idea of a blossom. Just lots of little marks like that. And that's what makes them soft. And so this is what I like. See, I get these little marks. What I'm doing is I'm watching the edge of my brush and I'm just turning it, leaning it over to that edge and getting that light little edge. So I can take that light little edge, the petal edging, I can touch it right over here to, you know, pop up that edge of that petal right there like that. Maybe one right here drawing in, and then let the whole rest of the flower go transparent, see? Yeah, and it looks like you know what you're doing. Let's pull this down in. There's the edge. So see, I put the movement in, then I put the edges of the petals in, and I don't pull down very far because that would destroy the look of the edge. So I don't pull down very far. Let's take that edge. Let's draw a petal edge right here, right across the front coming in. This little petal comes right here like this. Right across. And just let some of that just fade away. We don't need a whole lot in there. It can be just different. All right, let's push a little bit right in there. maybe a little bit right here. Maybe this petal comes up right there before it goes down to this side, just soft, right? You don't need a whole bunch. There we go. That's just kind of pretty, little flowers there. And I like to take maybe some yellow oxide and some Hansa Yellow. Don't mix it up real well. And I just start up on the light side, tapping some of that, and then let it fade away. So yellow oxide and Hansa, right around like that, just soft little yellow centers. A little bit more Hansa. Just softness there to that. It's kind of pretty. And they're light and they're lacy. That's the big thing. They get lacy. Let's take a lighter green. Nice big spring kind of light green. And add some pretty light little leaves here. Just to get more different green in there. That's kind of neat. And some other green here. Like that. Kind of pretty. That's a little much, so we'll just pull through it a bit and start pulling through it until we kind of like the color here. Sometimes let's just take a light green and just kind of smear it out through there. I don't need very much. Let's take the green and burnt sienna here, right through. And so I'll come right back through with more of a contrasting green. Remember, we can use negative painting too to help put in edges and stuff as well. Right like that. Let's pull that out, push that around. Those softer colors there, right? Maybe a little bit out there. Maybe a soft one right in here. Just a little pressure on the brush. Little soft look. Maybe just a little bit back here. Just a little bit of the green right in there. Some beautiful burnt sienna and green. Maybe a touch of the blue keeps that nice dark contrasty color right in there. It gets that contrast right there into the center, which we like. Maybe shape up that little blossom there a bit. But sometimes I will take, let's go back to that brighter green, and I'll break up all that dark with lighter green stroke in there so that it doesn't feel too like a dark hole in there. So I have that dark like right here. Let's pull some of that down, and then maybe some of the light green across it there to fill it in a bit. See? Now, if you want more contrast into the center of those flowers, just take a little corner of your brush with some of your red violet, and to the shadow side, low side, and around the center, just add a little more red violet, which is beautiful little deep, rich, cool color. And that will give you just a touch more contrast. You could add that back up over here to this other side. Now, I got all this green, and let me show you one of my favorite things to do is to take that green. So we're green and that yellows and stuff, and into that green, and pull a little bit of it into my rose. And this rose is tacking up, so this is really easy to do. And if I think I dragged it too much, I pull the other way and pull it out. But see how it gets just a hint of that green into the flower, which is quite pretty. It needs just a hint of it into the flower, and it's quite pretty. And pull out if you think you're too much. Or I can put that's all dry there, so we take a little softer light yellow. Just a bit, and just lightly kiss the edges of it there. But that lighter little green is quite pretty there, see? And you had the blue back here, right? So the blue, and so this is something I always look, if I carry the blue into the composition, then I'll take my light blue, blue and white, a real light blue here, something like that background, so it's pretty light. And I put it usually over towards the shadow side or something, like right back in here. That's not quite light enough. And I love that. So it's just a little whisper of it back into the flower. So right back up over here, maybe right back in here. Sometimes I'll draw more petals with it, right in there. Maybe a whisper of it over in here. Bit of it into my flowers here. Right? It just, there's something about tying the flowers, so right in here, it ties the flowers to the background. Right? Just gives them a commonality there with that background. And it works. Little bits. Sometimes up and into the center, sometimes not. Now, you can do a whole heck of a lot more. Little marks and stuff, and really make your flower look quite fluffy and stuff. I think I want just I want this. These are nice. These compete against the main rows there a bit, so I want a touch more white. And I'm going to make sure my white gets thicker. Sometimes you see me, I thicken up my white. I use the medium to thicken it up, and then sometimes I just do it 2 or 3 times. But I want to just build that light up in the very front of the flower. So this is about the rose, you know what I mean? It's about the rose. So a little movement, just the tip of my filbert here to get some of that nice, beautiful movement there. Maybe a little bit of yellow in it. So this one transitions from a light yellow over into that violet there. It pulls and does that little green going through. That's okay. And restate that edge. Just roll over on the brush and state that edge. That's prettier. Maybe just a touch lighter. It's amazing, as it dries down, you may have to touch that front of that rose a couple of times to get the lightness that you want. And don't forget, you can walk some of it further back too. Here, some of it further back. And that's up to you how far and how much light you use. A little bit here. Here we go. That's kind of pretty. I like that one. And just make sure, like that's one of the things I always look is make sure I don't cut my rose in half. And I do have that problem. So I'll just thin that color that I was just using out a bit and just drag it just lightly here and let it fade away. I don't like colors to change between petals. I like it to change on petals. So the yellow is shifting to the violet here on the petal, not between the petals, if that makes sense. So there you go. It's kind of a little different and airy and little green strokes and stuff. And I can take some of this and increase contrast over here if I want, just a bit to pull your eye over there. Just a bit. I can make some light little green here. Marks to suggest some vein lines here, but I love the casual nature of the painting. I just love the casual nature of a painting like this. Maybe just a bit of that green, picking up that edge right there. Isn't that kind of fun, light and airy? Let's bring the stem back out. So we'll have the idea of the stem coming through there. A bit more. I love burnt sienna, little touches of the burnt sienna. Just little bits of it. There. Love that. I really like that bold stroke up there. I like that. And then going right to that faded edge right there. I like that. So there you go. I'm going to leave that as that, I think, because I like it. I like the transparency look to the flowers. So what you do, again, in a recap, is you push in the movement of your flowers, right? Not a lot of movement and not a lot of paint. Blur it all out. Sometimes take your brush and blur it all out. But make sure you see the movement of those petals. The in and out, the movement. What direction are they going? Up or out? And then you roll your brush in, pick up that corner, and you come back and you just draw that little edge. And that's what makes the soft little petal edge to a bunch of those flowers, okay? And it's really a lot of fun, all right? So I'm going to show you all kinds of stuff all summer long here with these flowers and doing fun things like that. Of course, we're going to paint a lot of roses, but of course we'll paint peonies and we'll paint, and I have requests for iris and a whole bunch of other things. So we're going to do all of those, and lilies, and we'll do all of them. But I want to show you some of these edging techniques, wet on wet, half tone techniques, where you can paint some beautiful flowers and use a whole bunch of different techniques, okay? All right, guys. Don't forget to go over and check our main channel, too, because I'm going to be doing that, putting flowers and stuff over there, of course, with landscapes. And I'm a firm believer that you watch all of them, because how I use the brush in a landscape will affect how I paint my flowers. They are linked together, guys. They are linked together, okay? Thanks very much. Don't forget to subscribe. Please click the like button, okay? We need that like button clicked, because then the more likes it gets, the more YouTube throws it out there, which is logical, guys. It's logical, because if they have people clicking a like on a video, YouTube is going to promote it, and then that helps promote our channel. So even if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, go subscribe to YouTube so you can like the video, okay? And then we'll keep everything going for you, all right? All right. Fair? Fair. Okay. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.